Welcome back. This is Exoplitics Radio. I'm your host, Alfred Weber. We're with Stephen Bassett, who is a leading advocate for ending the 62-year government-imposed truth embargo regarding an extraterrestrial presence engaging the human race. Welcome back, Steve.
Yes, Howard, glad to be back with you.
You know, just prior to the break, you had put forward a very creative explanation for the interrelation between the financial meltdown that we're experiencing and the extraterrestrial embargo. And I was wondering if you could just reframe that again for our audience.
All right. We're talking about why didn't disclosure happen in 2009? And you can broaden that question. Why didn't a lot of things happen in 2009 under the Barack Obama administration? Fact is, it was a bad year for the Democrats. The year did not go well for the president. A lot of people are disappointed, including people who voted for him, without question. And because he hasn't delivered anywhere near to the degree that they expected. Why? The best reason I can give for this is that the Republicans played some very serious political hardball. As I pointed out, I have theorized publicly many times that the Democrats, based upon things that have happened to key members of the party, things they've said and done, going all the way back to 1991, had made the decision when they got back in the White House they were going to disclose the ET presence. And, of course, they would have then obtained one of the great political legacies of all time. And all of this was shaping up pretty well. And in addition, they had announced at a press conference in Washington, D.C. in the late summer of 2004 the new Apollo project, which was going to be an FDR New Deal high-tech renaissance program for the United States with hundreds of billions of dollars being put into the development of every conceivable kind of green technology, an environmentally safer and enhancing technology that they would then be manufactured in the U.S., hire the U.S., then licensed out to the world, given away to the third world, whatever, thus turning around the American economy and putting us back in the manufacturing business, et cetera, et cetera. Grand program. When they lost the election in 2004, they kind of shelved it. But I know it's always been on the works, and you could learn about it by going to the website where they parked it, which is called Apollo Alliance, ApolloAlliance.org. Okay, so all this, I believe this is in the works. So we're coming into October, and by October, the Republicans were well aware they weren't going to win that election. They were toast. So they're facing the prospect of the Democrats coming into the White House, launching a New Deal high-tech revolution in America that would put millions of Americans to work, particularly high-end scientists and engineers and what have you, disclosing the ET presence, and then what follows is the emergence of that ET technology and its potential inclusion in this high-tech revolution. If that were to come about anywhere near as intended, the Republicans probably figured they wouldn't get back in the White House until after the century was over. So what to do, right? Well, what they did, in my opinion, is they deliberately triggered the financial collapse, which was coming. I mean, it was going to come because of all the unbelievable abuses of the financial system. Under the Bush administration, they were going to they triggered the financial collapse so that they could to strip the Treasury, basically, and start the bailout process before the election even was held, which is important because once you have a president-elect, it's a little harder to move stuff along because that person is sort of the president to be and the party to be because, after the election, the Democrats and Republicans took over or were at that point, based on the results, were then going to be in control of the Congress. So they actually started this process before the election, got things rolling. And before the Democrats even got to the White House, many tens of billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars were already in the pipeline as part of the bailout, all going to the Wall Street, to these firms, that then passed through them to the foreign banks that were owed money. So everybody was being made whole, right, on Wall Street. These are heavy backers of the Republican Party. And furthermore, by starting the crisis then, they didn't go to jail. Because if Lehman Brothers waits a few more months and collapses after the Democrats are in power, you might have seen a lot of these guys in jail. Instead, they made off like bandits. Well, all right, that's a payoff, right, to a lot of people, and a lot of people benefited from it. But more importantly, it virtually bankrupted the country, which is already hanging by a thread anyway. It completely strips the the Treasury and takes away the funding for the Democrats to do anything. And it puts the country in financial crisis. So from the day that Obama arrives in the White House, we're in crisis. And it completely upset the ability of the Democrats to do anything. Then the Democrats compounded the problem by making the decision, in spite of the financial crisis, to make the move on health care in the first months, and knowing full well it was going to create a partisan firestorm. And so they will launch into the health care issue, which completely mires them down in some of the worst partisan politics ever. And so the year just falls apart. Well, this is because of what the Republicans pulled on them in October, late October. And it just spiraled forward. So it was a highly successful maneuver by the Republican Party, so successful that Obama's approval ratings have dropped to the point that now you've got people seriously considering the Republicans taking over the Congress again in 2010, and, of course, getting back in the White House in 2012. This is political hardball. The Democrats don't play hardball. That's one of their problems. They play softball, okay? And the best example I can give that shows this difference between the two parties is that the Democrats, like the Republicans in 2008, lost a very bitter election in 2000, which none of us will ever forget until the day we die. So they lose the election, and George Bush is going to be coming into the White House, and so the staffers down there, as they're clearing out all their stuff from their offices in the very last days of the administration before the new people come in, went around and they pried the W off of a lot of the keyboards and the computers that were going to remaining computers. They just plied it. So when the new staff came in for the Republican Party, they look at the keyboards and there's no W there. And they really were angry about this. There were a number of news stories, and they were claiming vandalism and how childish this was, and this is just terrible. It just shows how awful they are, and they're bad sports and bad losers, yada, yada, yada. Well, that's the Democrats prying the W off keyboards. When the Republicans lost a bitter election, or were about to lose a bitter election, they didn't pry the B or the O off the keyboards. They stole a couple of $1 trillion, basically. They shoved hundreds of billions of dollars and started a process that was going to put $1 trillion+ into the hands of their backers and cronies and friends and pay off Wall Street while leaving the country basically to suck eggs. That's hardball, all right? And this is one of the problems in this country, right? If both parties are playing softball, that's good. If both parties are playing hardball, that's good, because that's why you have this kind of back and forth, these two major parties acting as a check and balance against each other. But if one's playing hardball and one's playing softball, the country is going to pay a heavy price. It's not a very good game either, by the way, to watch. It's very unpleasant. And that is my view as to what turned 2009 from what could have been a transformative year. Not speaking partisan-wise. I don't care who was in power. If what was about to happen had happened, it would have been a transformative year. Turned it into a very awful year. Now the question is, whether we're going to move on now. I mean, that year is over. We're in a new year. Can we get back on track? And that's an important question.
Right. So let's take that. Let's take that and look at, from a disclosure and from an exopolitics point of view,
mm-hmm.
What are the trends that you think will be occurring in 2010? I know that in one of the email conversations that we had, one of the concerns that you expressed was that Barack Obama had seemed to have bought the Afghan war and was on the verge of buying the 60-year truth embargo.
Owning in a sense, yeah.
Right, sorry.
Well, look, the Afghan war is a separate issue. Technically, it's not disclosure related, but it is educational, because I think most people understood that when he went to the West Point and stated that he was going to do a troop surge in Afghanistan. At that point, he owns the war, and that whatever happens, don't bother blaming George Bush or the Republicans for it. It's now your war, right? So you're now fully responsible for everything that happens next. Now, people understand this. Okay, fine. This is also true about the truth embargo, though it's a little murkier, clearly. This embargo is going to become his, too, pretty soon. In which case, he's going to have to take a lot of flack for why his administration didn't act on this sooner.
I mean, you know, his Democratic predecessor, from a certain point of view, could be looked at being Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter had the honesty in his campaign to at least raise the issue.
He mentioned his UFO sighting. He might have done that somewhat naively. He got a lot of press and then thousands of letters poured into the White House. And, John Carter's an honest man. He actually tried to respond to that, but it was the Cold War was still going. There was no way it was going to be allowed to go forward. So his efforts were shut down pretty quickly. And so Obama, of course, in a way, is the son of Carter. Could have been the son of Carter on this issue,
right.
Because the Cold War now over 18 years. But the equation was pretty clear to me. If he discloses fairly soon, then he gets all of the upside and benefits of making this maneuver. I mean, it completely confirms his open, transparent government initiative. He would have been heralded as the great truth teller. No one would have blamed him one iota for the truth embargo's history or length of it or whatever. It was all good. But as time goes by, he is becoming another president who did not act on this. And
well, now, Steve.
So he starts getting the downside. So the equation is now shifting to the negative, and this is the message we're trying to get out to him.
Yeah. Let's go to kind of a nitpicking mode for a moment.
Let's pick some nits.
Yeah, because I want to go back here to something, because a lot of us invested a lot of time in this.
Mm-hmm.
You said, furthermore, the Citizens Briefing book generated during the transition by the Change.gov website was stripped of all UFO-related input to the book prior to submission to the president. This is not acceptable.
Right.
And that's a statement of yours.
In my press release just went out.
Yeah. Now, this is going back to 2008, 2009, but in a way, it's a harbinger or a sign of what was in store, and you bring it forth in I think it's the 2010 press release.
Mm-hmm.
So could you talk about what's going on inside the Barack Obama? And this was a transition team headed up by an individual who had held a National Press Club press conference on disclosure.
Well, he called for, Podesta called for the release of all UFO files.
Yeah.
Look, your listeners need to understand this is a highly complicated thing that's going on here, and it's many multifaceted. But I'll try to simplify it as much as possible. You have, first of all, the most important thing that's happening here is the decision-making process to execute the disclosure maneuver. And this is fundamentally something that will be decided between a representative of the executive branch, and I think you know who I would pick to be that representative, and the military intelligence committees. These are what I call cross-agency committees that I believe manage this issue deep down inside the secret empire. All right, they meet. They don't put out emails. They don't. They don't hold public meetings. This is happening deep down, and there's going to have to be a coming together. Somebody from the executive branch is going to meet with these committees, and they're going to make the decision of exactly when to disclose. Now, that's one process, and that's all hidden. Believe me, we're not going to know anything about it. And then there is still the ongoing truth embargo, which is not, by and large, being fed a lot of new energy. I mean, it's sort of just gliding now. I think they really stopped actively supporting or engaging, maintaining this truth embargo with a lot of money or effort in late 1999, around 1999. Since then, it's kind of been on its own momentum. But still, there is a truth embargo out here. And to some degree, you can't step away from it, because if you do, it suddenly puts up a lot of flags, and people are going to go, what? Or to put it another way, that the way the government wants to see this happen is that they want to be able to come forward one day and announce the ET presence, and it would be a complete and total surprise, meaning that nobody is going to know this is coming until virtually the day it happens. They cannot have this thing turn into a media mess leading into it by leaking anything or putting up any trial balloons. They don't want to be pressured, driven into disclosure by a media on a rampage. They want this thing to be clean, and so it's not. And plus, you've got many entities working in many different areas. They're not all on the same page. It's a very complicated chess game we're playing here. So it didn't surprise me that the UFO material was stripped out of the briefing book. They didn't want to emphasize it. Right? It got its play. It was on the site. It got a lot of attention. But then when the briefing book was done, they stuck it out, because they knew if they kept it in there, it was going to be popping up indefinitely, and they didn't want that. So it's a control. It was a control move. The other point I made in that article, or that press release rather, was that, of course, the press continued to stand down during 2009, and they didn't ask any of the tough questions. They really didn't break out, particularly the political press corps, and in particular the White House press corps. They're not looking at what's going on. They're not reading they're not reacting to the press releases we're sending them. They're not seeing the picture, and they're not, or if they do, they're not willing to ask those tough questions. They have become too enamored with their salaries and their perks and the prestige of being in the press corps there, and are and not concerned enough about their role as independent press acting on behalf of the American people to challenge the state and learn what's going on and report back to us. So they're failing us without question. And so,
well, Steve, could I jump in there?
Yeah.
We have in this country, and we can and in this world in some ways, going back to the 1953 CIA Robertson panel, the Durant report, which in effect issued a mandate that in the major fields, in science, in government, in media, in education, every report or any discourse relating to the extraterrestrial presence or to UFOs was to be treated with ridicule. And that has been a self-enforced mechanism inside journalism since 1953.
Well, yeah, we talked about that extensively. The media was directly involved in the truth embargo in the early days and remained that way until it became institutionalized. I think there were actual deals cut with the networks and some of the key papers back in the 50s, which was not hard to do. It would have been easy, and got the ball rolling. And then after enough years, with the networks are ridiculing it and not dealing with it, and of course the CIA founded the National Enquirer and the Weekly World News, and they put a bunch of junk in there. Once they had it fully kind of institutionalized, the truth embargo, media-wise, virtually ran itself. But that is changing too. As I said, the major energy going into the truth embargo stops around 1999. Since then, the press is covering this more and more and more. And so that's another sign that the truth embargo is nearing its end. But while the press is covering more and more and more, the higher you go up, when you get up to the very top, New York Times, Washington Post, you talk about the three key networks, ABC, NBC, CBS, and then, of course, like the Washington Press Corps. At the very top, they are still operating like the truth embargo is still in place.
Right.
Underneath that level, though, more and more media are covering this, and even those top-end entities are doing some things, right? ABC News has had some documentaries. Right. And to emphasize this point, let me toot my horn a little bit. After the Paradigm Research Group's press conference last April 20, the next day, this is when Edgar Mitchell called for the truth embargo to end and asked Obama to do it, the astronaut. This PRG and disclosure and all that was written up in the Washington Post and the Washington Times the next day. And then 3 weeks later, PRG's work was featured on a New York Times online story, extensive story.
Right.
And then this month, PRG's Exopolitics work and the disclosure stuff is featured in a long story about George Norrie in the Atlantic, and is fully featured, is the feature of a story in the Washington Monthly.
Yeah.
So the coverage is happening, but we're not there yet. And in order to, and one of the ways we'll get disclosure, and there's many ways we can get it, but one of the ways we get it is if we can break through and really have a breakthrough at the top tier, and that's where the Facts on Washington comes in. I mean, that's why it shows that. I felt that of the if you look at the media as a long chain, right, that is holding back the people from learning the truth about the ET presence, and you want to break, and if you just break the chain at one place, it goes, right? Okay, so you want to pick the weakest link or the most vulnerable link, and my view is that the best shot of breaking a link is the link that refers to the White House press corps. That we have enough news about Hillary Clinton and Podesta and Richardson and the stuff that went on to the Rockefeller Initiative. We've got so much confirmed stuff there, documents, photos, everything. And this is clearly a news story for the political press from their point of view, that if we focus our attention on that link, we can break that link. And if you break it, the truth embargo is probably over in a few weeks. So that's why I created the Facts on Washington. We laid the groundwork by first directing a lot of mail to the president-elect. That was in the transition period from November 5 to January 20. And then we directed a lot of mail and faxes to the president in the White House from January 21 to May 31st. That was all preliminary. Then when disclosure hadn't taken place by June 1, we then went into Phase 3, the final phase, which is, of course, what you'll find when you go to faxonwashington.org right now, faxonwashington.org. You can also go to Phase 2. There's a link to Phase 2. You can get the information to continue to send letters and faxes to the president. But we're focusing right now on the White House press corps by directing all the letters, faxes, and emails to their association, the White House Correspondents Association. And these letters are calling for them to ask these questions. And these questions are listed on the website, including the documentation supporting them.
Right.
All there. And we know that if even a couple of members of the press corps covering the White House or the Department of State where Clinton is or the CIA where Panetta is, if even a few of them start asking these tough questions, I think the whole thing blows up in a short amount of time.
Now, have you started to get feelers back from any of the press corps as to wanting to meet with you, get more background? Because these people are sticking their I know that Billy Cox has written articles where he said that he's very skeptical that any member of the Washington press corps would risk their journalistic career.
They won't until they do.
Yeah.
It's an easy thing to say that they're not going to risk. They're not risking much of anything. Look, the press corps has been pretty much just sitting there taking notes for the last 20 years, really.
Yeah.
And a whole lot of things have gotten by them. I mean, they're not doing their job. They're failing us. I mean, that's that simple. I mean, I don't think they're bad people. I think most of them really want to be journalists. But, they get this White House press pass and they get down there. I've been in that room many times, and you feel really special, and you don't want to upset the president's administration. You don't want to upset your association because they're afraid you'll pull your press pass. So when somebody like Helen Thomas really starts getting kind of nasty and start asking some really tough questions, I mean, the press secretary they didn't let her ask another question for something like, I don't know, a year and a half, 2 years. She just sat there. I mean, they wouldn't take a question from her. And did any of the other White House press corps say that's unacceptable and boycott the thing? No. They just sat there and let that happen. So they're failing in their job.
So that it's the White House press secretary then that is really determining who gets to ask questions.
Yes and no. Let me just say that if they're determined that somebody won't ask a question, they can do that, but they don't do it often because it's could still be a problem for them. But they did do it to Helen Thomas, and to their shame, the White House press corps did not. What they should have done is said, look, either Helen gets to ask a question or none of us are coming in. Right. So, but that's history now. The point is, are they going to do their job? Well, I think it's possible that some of them will. What's going on is it is a risk, right? And so they're worried about what their peers might do, they're worried about what their editor might do, and they're worried about what the association might do, and they're worried about what the White House press office might do. And so all of these letters, if everybody will go to faxonwashington.org, send a letter, fax, and an email, do all three because they can't keep track of it, a couple of paragraphs saying, look, we want you to ask these questions. We want these reporters asking these questions. Put a few questions in there or just refer them back to the faxonwashington.org website where the questions are all listed. If enough, what this correspondence is doing is telling these reporters, we got your back here. We're
right.
with you, right? So gin up some courage and do your job because we're with you. So if some people give you a hard time, we're going to stand up and defend you. This is kind of what, I mean, it shouldn't be necessary, but the fact is that it won't hurt. Plus, eventually, this is going to be a news story. You see, we've really got them in a corner here, Alfred. They know that if they even acknowledge they're getting this correspondence, the first questions will be, well, can we see it? And then the next question is, what do you think about it? And so they don't want to have to deal with this. So they're just
they. You mean they being the
White House Press Association? Yeah. So they're just and the press office. So they're just trying to hope it'll all go away. Well, it's not going to go away. A couple of months ago on C-SPAN morning show, Robert Gibbs, the press secretary, was asked about this correspondence specifically. He didn't answer the question. And some reporters have been contacting them, particularly Billy Cox of the Sarasota Herald Tribune.
Oh, good.
Contact the Washington Press Correspondents Association asking specifically about this correspondence. Well, they won't return his phone calls and they won't answer his email. So you see, this shows that they know that we've got them in a corner here.
Yeah.
And so the more correspondence that pours in, the harder it's going to get on them until something has to give. Because, you see, while they may refuse to acknowledge this correspondence, any reporter can go to faxonwashington.org and see scores of examples of it. I've got it right up there on the site. Representative, letters from people around the world, because this stuff is coming from all over the world, that's going in, and they can actually see examples. They don't have to ask the White House Correspondents Association. They just go to faxonwashington.org and they can read the darn letters. Not all of them. It's just a representative sample. So what are they going to do? I mean, so this is the game, the chess game that's being played here, and. We're going to keep this going, Alfred, until disclosure takes place. We're not going to stop. They're going to keep getting these letters, faxes, and emails right up until the day that disclosure happens.
Now, are these letters under the program? Are the letters, faxes, and emails going both to the White House Correspondents Association and to the White House?
Well, the primary focus, if you go to Fax on Washington right now, that page is now focused exclusively on the White House Correspondents Association.
Now,
and that's where we want to focus. But somebody wants to send a letter to the White House, they can still do that.
What about adding? Press Secretary, White House Press Secretary Robert Gibbs' office to it?
Well, first of all, everything that goes in. I mean, this stuff he already knows about this.
I see.
Right. So it's like a 2-for-1. I don't want to divide the focus in half.
Okay.
Because Gibbs is fully aware that this correspondence. He's aware of all the correspondence that Obama has gotten, and he's aware of the correspondence that the White House Correspondents Association has gotten.
Okay.
And the other thing is that the White House gets a river of mail and faxes and emails. Right. All right. So that anything that goes in that door is coming in like in a herd of cattle.
Right.
Whereas the White House Correspondents Association gets a tiny fraction of that amount of mail, and so this correspondence just really stands out. So we're using that approach.
Oh, okay, good. Now, given that and that channel is going forward full steam, let me open up a conversation on a parallel potential channel, which has been an historic channel, and that would be a channel of the Million Facts on Washington. But this would be a Million Facts on the U.S. Congress, because that has been a traditional venue of seeking disclosure through a committee hearing, through some other venue that now there has not been a committee hearing on the extraterrestrial presence. In
1968?
Yeah. So
not the ET presence is on, quote, UFOs.
Yeah,
in 60.
yeah,
I can answer
UFOs.
your question real easy, Alfred.
Yeah.
the country is often referred to as the ship of state.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's a pretty big ship. Would you not agree? Very big ship, big boat.
Okay.
So a big boat's got to have a big anchor, right?
Okay.
It's got this long chain that the ship of state that trails down the ship of state down deep into the water, and at the end of that chain is a huge, massive cement block.
Okay.
Which is the anchor, right? That keeps, kind of keeps things from going anywhere.
Okay.
That's Congress.
Okay.
Congress is now basically a giant block of cement and has been for some time. Efforts to get the Congress into this go way back, all the way back into the early 90s, late 80s, and I can vouch for this, and it is essentially a waste of time. And it happens to be the case that getting anything done within the Congress is almost, with a occasional exception, a waste of time. They are essentially a block of cement. You're bouncing a ball off a block of cement. And that's one of the reasons we're in the trouble we're in now, right? It's the failure of Congress is another one of the components. Look, the United States is in real trouble right now, and a lot of people think that was like going to happen. It was inevitable. No, it wasn't. We are an incredibly powerful country with a huge amount going for us. For us to get where we are right now, a whole lot of things had to fail, right? And people don't pay enough attention to that. What went wrong? Well, one of the things that went wrong is that Congress turned into a block of cement. It doesn't do anything. It can't accomplish anything. You can't motivate it. It won't act. It won't respond. It no longer it oversees much of anything. The intelligence committees are basically useless in terms of overseeing the secret empire. They're basically like a gnat standing on top of a blue whale, right, trying to say, hey, everything's under control here. So it's useless. And so essentially, while I do send occasionally congressional alerts to them, right, I do not put much effort there.
There's a colleague of mine who was in Congress. In fact, I've talked to her about the extraterrestrial disclosure field, and she's a very open-minded person. But she was hounded out of Congress by a very powerful Republican machine in Georgia. I'm speaking of former Congresswoman Cynthia McKinney.
Right.
Because she was one of the few congresspersons who challenged all of the assertions of the Bush administration and took senior Bush officials on the carpet, brought them on the carpet on key issues like 9/11.
Right.
And I had occasion to meet with her in Kuala Lumpur and briefed her on my work with the Carter administration on extraterrestrial presence and all of the work that we in the exopolitical community are doing. She, of course, had left Congress then, but it's so rare that one meets an individual congressperson. Do you know of, like, any individual congresspersons who now would be willing to, carry this issue?
There are none.
There are none?
No, there's none. What you need to know is this. A majority of the members of Congress know, probably a very large majority know the ET presence is real, either because they've been tipped or because intellectually they know it. But they simply won't deal with it. There's probably even some contactees up there, based on the percentages, just the low end of the percentages. There's probably some contactees in Congress. And they just won't deal with it. In general, anybody that wants to get aggressive with ideas or start telling the truth, meaning be very candid, they squash them or they ridicule them very quickly. You've seen this over and over again. There are a few people in Congress who I admire for being extremely frank, very straightforward. I don't necessarily agree with everything they say, but they really are very brutally honest about what's going on. And McKinney was one of them, but Ron Paul is another, Bernie Sanders, and I even put Barney Frank in there. And what you have, you almost can see the Congress, other members sort of trying to assist the media in ridiculing these guys and make them seem like they're nuts or crazy or clowns. In other words, think of Congress not so much as a block of cement, but a square block, but think of it as a round block, a cement wheel. So if anybody pokes their head up a little bit and says, "Hey, here's the truth," the wheel just rolls over them. And that's another reason why the Congress has failed. Right? That there are some people up there I think would like to do something, would really like to move things forward, and the whole system just squashes them. So whatever the reasons, whatever the specifics of how Congress got that way, it's no longer a factor, and I don't see that changing. Our best bet is the media right now, or another country.
Okay, now let's shift our focus here. We've got about 20 minutes left in the segment.
Mm-hmm.
Let's shift our focus and look at what you think is going to be coming, how 2010 will unfold as a disclosure year.
Interesting. Well, the economic fiasco is not over, and it could get worse this year. But in a sense, it's been discounted. In other words, people know what's going on. They've already taken their positions. More people are going to lose their jobs. More homes are going to get foreclosed. But overall, it's like become almost the status quo. So it doesn't carry the same distractive power that it did in 2009. The war, of course, the wars continue. And there may be some unpleasantness there, but once again, it's same old. So I don't see that is being more distractive than it was or has been. The healthcare thing is going to be a news issue, but I think the worst of the distraction is over. But it's going to be in the news. And there may be some terrorism attacks, so that'll be in the news, and the news loves to suck that up. But overall, we're now in the second year. The first year went really badly. The Democrats have got to get their act together, or they're going to take huge hits in the election in November, and they could get in trouble even for 2012. So they had got to get their act together. Now, what that means, of course, there's a lot of possibilities there. But what it fundamentally means is whatever their program, whatever their plans were for their first year, they need to start getting them together for this year. They need to do this year what they had hoped to do last year. Now, some of that's been limited by the fact that the country is bankrupt. But there may still be able to do some profound things, and nothing would be more profound than disclosure. And so, to me, politically, the need for the Democrats to let this happen, to get this out of the way, is greater than ever. And the number of countries that are jumping on the disclosure train is continuing to grow. By the way, one of the most important events of 2009, which we didn't mention earlier, was what happened in July, right? On July the 22nd, a story emerged out of Russia that the Russian Navy announced it was going to start declassifying its underwater UFO encounters. Now, that's the Navy with those nuclear submarines, that one that used to could still threaten us, right? This is a formidable Navy. And over the years, they've encountered objects going 200 miles an hour, traveling at 20,000 feet, which we can't do, and trailing, groups of objects trailing their submarines and then flying out of the water. These are pretty significant reports. And they announced they're going to declassify them. Whoa. Well, there's no way that the Russian Navy announces something like that unless Vladimir Putin and the Kremlin said they could, right? And so this is very significant that this announcement came out. And to me, the message from Russia was, maybe we'll disclose. We're aware of what's going on here. Maybe we'll disclose. So Russia and China, in my opinion, are both now prime candidates to disclose the ET presence before the United States. So the Democrats are at risk of losing the legacy, right? The historical legacy. They're at risk of seeing one of their the major nation of their most formidable former enemy do it, or the largest communist nation in the world do it. I mean, what's at stake here is unbelievably important. And John Podesta is still over at the Center for American Progress. Hillary Clinton is still at State. Panetta's still at CIA. Richardson's still, the governor of New Mexico and a major player. So they know what to do. And so my view is that 2010 is just as ripe for disclosure as 2009, maybe even a little bit riper. And the sooner the better for them. The longer they wait, the worse it gets. So I'm optimistic that something's going to give this year. I said that last year, but remember, a lot of my projections for the administration was before the economic fiasco launched in the third week of October. So I feel I got a bit of a pass there. That's my feeling about 2010, and we need to constantly pay attention for more of these indicators, like the Russian announcement, like the Vatican's actions. You're going to see more of that, in my opinion. Another thing that's been going on is the scientific community is really trying to position itself, like the Vatican Church, on the right side of this issue, right? So, for instance, on November the 15th of 2009, a scientist that works for the Carnegie Science Institute, turns up at a meeting of the American Association for the Advancement of Science in Chicago, and gives them a sort of an assessment of where we are as regards extrasolar planets. And this was covered. It was in the news. And so you know what the prediction is now for the number of, not the number of other planets in the galaxy, the number of Earth-like planets in the galaxy?
Right.
Could be as many as 100 billion.
100 billion?
100 billion. Back in 2003, a couple of dudes wrote a book called Rare Earth. A couple of scientists wrote a book called Rare Earth about how when they really look hard at the evidence, it looks like, life could be incredibly rare in the galaxy, and we may be extremely unique, yada, yada, yada. That was 2003. And all the debunkers like Phil Plait and Bill Nye, the science guy, and Shostak and Shermer jumped on that to help confirm that, the UFO thing is bogus. Well, now it's 100 billion Earth-like planets.
That is extraordinary. Just to take a moment to dwell on that, because the conventional wisdom, and you can look this up anywhere, is that there were only 200 to 400 million stars in this planet, in this galaxy.
Oh no, it's a lot bigger than that.
Okay.
Well, but remember, there are almost, these solar systems have more than one planet around them.
Right.
Okay.
No. Right.
No. But I'll get you a number. I'll have you a stronger number here in a second. But
right. Yeah.
So, but that's not all that's been happening. As you know, throughout 2009, you couldn't have a month go by when another announcement would come out of NASA about water on the moon, water indications on Mars, and
right.
water flowing on Mars, water on moons of Jupiter, just one after another after another. And then, of course, they reignited, the whole water on not water, but the whole life on Mars issue by stating that further investigation seems to indicate that that's Mars rock that they talked about in 1997, that is life fossils in there, right? So what's going on here? Well, NASA, JPL, the scientific community, seeing that disclosure is getting closer and closer, essentially is trying to get on the right side of the issue. They're positioning themselves.
Exactly. Well, yeah. Just to look here, I'm looking at the Milky Way. Sorry, it was my error. The number of stars is 100 to 400 billion. So if you've got 100 billion Earth-like planets, that means that you would have
one out of every three systems has got an Earth-like planet in it.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Now they say it could be that high. Maybe it's only 50 billion, but this is a big number, and the upshot is that folks, the obvious is now obvious. The idea that we're the only life-giving planet in the galaxy is ridiculous. The idea that we're only the sentient life is ridiculous. So grow up and join the 21st century. The Catholic Church has. The White House press corps.
Now, let's just take this from a slightly different point of view, and that is look at disclosure from the extraterrestrial. from the extraterrestrial.
Assuming we were extraterrestrial, yeah.
Yeah. Now, I know that there are a multiplicity. So there's a big, there's a one sees many different numbers as to the number of extraterrestrial civilizations that are maybe visiting Earth or have been identified, and some of them are hyperdimensional, and from some of them may be from parallel universes. But do you have any concept of what the extraterrestrials themselves may be doing? For example, there's a great deal of controversy over the December 9th Norway Light Kremlin pyramid. There's a alleged pyramid a mile wide over the Kremlin at the same time. This was the night before Barack Obama's warlike Nobel Prize speech, and some people say it was a rocket. Some people say it was the ETs knocked down the rocket. Some people say it was HAARP. Some people say it was an ET light combined with an ET. Some people say it was Project Bluebeam. It's that time where there's many different rumors and things going on. But do you have a sense of what the ETs are doing?
Well, I have no firsthand knowledge about what any ET is doing about anything. Various sighting events are always interesting, but no single event is all that important. It's clearly the case that thanks to the internet, we're all paying close attention, which is great. Glad of that. So if something happens over Norway, somebody films it, goes on YouTube, goes around the world, right, within days. So not only are we paying attention, but we have the ability to show or raise issues about anything that happens almost overnight. This is all very important. Without question, the number of sightings in 2009 was good. There was plenty of them. They're getting filmed more often. They're getting YouTube more often. And so the effect of all of these continued sightings indicates two things. One, the ETs haven't left yet. And two, they continue to be rather ostentatious in their goings and comings. Whatever the validity of any particular event, that's not the point. It's a little aggravating how many people feel compelled to launch Chinese lanterns now, but apparently it's just become an addiction. And so, Chinese lanterns are flying all over the place and creating all kinds of bogus sightings, and it's not helpful. And I wish people would stop launching the damn things before they burn something down. But whatever, it doesn't matter. I mean, the ET presence is here, and there's plenty of indication that the sightings continue. So the fundamental premise that I have operated on for some time seems to be still in place, and that is that the extraterrestrials are not shy about raising the public awareness of their presence. And the raising of public awareness is going to facilitate disclosure. So one might conclude that they are facilitating disclosure by pushing us, right? And that's premise still holds for me until I get a better one. That's the one that I'm using. It's possible that they simply don't care whether we disclose or don't disclose, and they don't care whether they're seen or not seen. They're just doing whatever the hell they want when they want, and what we do is of no concern to them. That's possible too. But the overall evidence doesn't seem to support that, so I stick to my fundamental presence. They're pushing us, and we're listening, right? And I believe they're creating some of these crop circles, and we're certainly paying attention to them. It's one of the best-known phenomena in the world, and there's pictures of crop circles on untold millions of refrigerators right as we speak. So refrigerator doors. So
and now people say that the orb phenomenon, one interpretation of the orb phenomenon is as an interdimensional intelligence.
Who knows?
Phenomenon.
Who knows?
Yeah.
It seems to be a relatively new phenomena. I don't recall it being a factor 20, 30 years ago. Some people think it's purely a matter of digital cameras, but these things apparently do show up in regular cameras. There's a sense it's new. That's intriguing to me because if it's some sort of artifact of workings of cameras, they should have been all over photos going back 30, 40, 50 years. So something's going on there. Beyond that, I have no idea. But again, we're paying attention. So if somebody's spraying something in the sky, we're watching. If orbs are turning up, we're paying attention. This is the new world we're in. We have the power to pay attention. We have the power to spread the word.
Yeah. Now, I say that because there are several very famous photographs and YouTubes, and I published some of these photographs on Exoplitics.com. There were huge amounts of orbs over Barack Obama's famous Grant Park speech after the day, I think on the night that he was elected president.
Yeah.
And there have been UFOs photographed over various of his speeches, and these have been put up on YouTube in the context of trying to show support by the extraterrestrials of Barack Obama. And Barack Obama remains, as in the extraterrestrial field, as in other fields, kind of a lightning rod. I mean, some people say that he's a harbinger of disclosure. Others say no. But what do you think about all this phenomenology like orbs and UFOs around the figure of Barack Obama?
I think it's fun speculation. I think it reflects, again, the awareness of this issue has continued to grow. People are willing to connect the issue to any manner of things, which is good. It's exactly what you would expect, given what's happened in the last 60-some years. Doesn't mean it's true. May be completely wrong, but the speculation is true. It's definitely happening. That's a fact. Where it'll all go, I don't know. What will be? Are there really chemtrails? I don't know. Are these orbs anything more than artifacts of pictures? I don't know. Is there any connection between that and disclosure? Don't know. But I enjoy these speculations. I enjoy reading about them. And they reflect, I think, a growing interest and curiosity. But I also I want to see a lot of this resolved. And I divide the world up into two parts, the post-disclosure world and the pre-disclosure world. We're still in the pre-disclosure world. And one of the downsides of the pre-disclosure world is that because of the truth embargo and because of the withholding of a lot of things from the public by the state, a lot of people have been resulted in their going off into blind alleys and up box canyons and spinning around in circles and not going anywhere, wasting their time because their key information has been missing. They have or disinformation has been put out. A lot of these things could be resolved in a more open, transparent environment, and certainly post-disclosure. So I don't try to invest too much time in sorting these things out. I get disclosure first, and then I think our ability to get to the bottom of things post-disclosure may be dramatically enhanced. And that's the way I tend to approach things. So now, orbs, chemtrails, whatever. Post-disclosure, we may have a chance at figuring it out.
Now, Steve, we're down to the final minute or so. Mm-hmm. Could you give us our audience just a final summation vis-a-vis the Million Facts on Washington and other plans you have, how they can cooperate and be a part of this?
Just sent out an international press release to about 5,000 radio stations, television stations, and newspapers, indicating we're still going strong. That press release is up on the Paradigm Research Group website. I've booked about 25 or 30, I don't know how many. I will probably be doing about 45 radio interviews about it, the fact that it's still ongoing and it's going to continue. The website is factsonwashington.org, faxonwashington.org. And it's simple. We're just going to continue to pressure the White House Correspondents Association and their members, the White House Press Corps, and by extension, the political press corps covering the CIA, the Pentagon, and the State Department, to finally start asking the obvious but tough questions about this issue of people that are already connected to the issue, and we have proof of that, and it's right up on the website and elsewhere on the Internet. Thus, they would then be engaging the biggest news story of all time and probably setting himself up for some very nice Pulitzer Prizes, which they're welcome to have. That's what's going on. This is my principal project right now. However, more is in the works. I hope to announce within about 7 days that the X conference will take place this year and is being rescheduled for May 8-9 at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C. It's not a certainty yet, but it's close. We'll have a press conference afterwards on May the 10th. So that's in the works. We've got the ballot initiative scheduled for August. We've got Gary McKinnon's case coming to a head. We will see plenty of UFO-ET-related news and exopolitical-related news. And I'll finish up with one other thing. One of the most important events of 2009, which we didn't discuss, I'll mention it, was the emergence of the Examiner. In 2009, the Examiner really advanced dramatically in terms of the amount of writers and the amount of articles and the public awareness of it. This is a very significant development in journalism. There are other publications like the American Journal and Newsblaze and Op-Ed News and many others that are doing similar things. But the Examiner has just, in 2009, moved out in front of all of them because of the huge, there has plenty of money behind it. Phil Anschutz and others have big money, and they're involved. The Examiner is changing the face of journalism and also the face of information flow. It's got its pluses and its minuses. It's not a perfected concept, but one thing is clear. Not only has it emerged, but the presence of UFO and exopolitical-related material in it is huge. And so the Examiner has become a major conduit of information. Not all of it good, but nevertheless interesting, because even the good stuff, even the stuff that's probably off base, is pretty well written. So the Examiner is now a major force, and it's going to get bigger in 2010.
Great. Good. Well, Steve, thank you very much for joining us, and I look forward to you joining us again as events unfold during the coming year.
Yes, thank you.
We've been with Stephen Bassett, who is a leading advocate for ending the 62-year-old government-imposed truth embargo on the extraterrestrial presence. His principal websites are paradigmresearchgroup.org and factsonwashington.org. This is Exopolitics Radio. I'm your host, Alfred Weber. Please stay tuned. Thank you.